Isn't she just so iconic? I mean, what an entrance onto the stage, setting the tone nicely. Vera, it is an absolute pleasure and privilege to be with you here today. Yours is actually quite an unusual story in fashion because you have built a brand that you own over decades, but one that...
Many decades.
Many decades.
Many.
We won't say how many though, right? One that's really been built around emotion, not status, which is quite an important differentiation. And you've really redefined bridal in that time. But of course, the Vera Wang brand is about a lot more than bridal, which we're going to come to talk about. This is such a lovely time to talk to you because you're about a year into having sold the brand to WPP and transitioned into a new role.
Very exciting.
So tell us about your role and what's changed in that first year.
Well, I think, first of all, everybody just want to say hi, and I'm very happy and proud to be here. So thank you for coming. I have to say that for me, who has grown a brand by myself, it's been a long journey. And to say that it's difficult is really the truth. If you really analyze what it takes to start a brand, build a brand, maintain a brand, and eventually understand what it is to maybe exit a brand, I think those considerations make a lot of brand building and found your own house a challenging role. But I'm feeling extremely optimistic. I'm very lucky to have great partners, and we see we're very synergistic in terms of how we approach the business.
What have you had to, because you've kind of transitioned into a role that's more founder and chief creative officer, what have you had to let go of? And what have you realized you really shouldn't let go of?
Well, I think one of the things I don't have to worry about every day is finances. And every day, yep, finances. Nasty word for fashion designers. I have to say finance, certainly operationally.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the challenges of founding your own brand and building it. And I think there are only 24 hours in a day, and you really can't get to everything. And I'm a mom. I've raised 2 girls. So I have to say that I feel very fortunate that part has sort of been lifted off my shoulders.
And which part has been very important to you to keep hold of?
I think always for any founder, it's the brand itself. The codes of the brand, what you believe in, what the brand stands for. Ours is an extremely emotional brand. I mean, if you've ever seen a bride-to-be or her mother or her mother-in-law or future mother-in-law, it's extremely challenging at times. Joyful, but also challenging. And I think you really learn about human nature. You get to know a family really well by then. I mean, when you really spend that much time with the client, which is unusual in fashion today, in any other aspect of fashion. But when you do that, you really become, in a way, part of their family. A psychiatrist, a dressmaker, many, many roles you play. So I think it's an unusual brand that we've created, and it has an emotional connection to every single person that we touch globally for over 37 years.
Going back a bit to what you were saying about building a brand with credibility, what do you think people really misunderstand about how to do that now?
I don't think I've always understood how to build a brand. I mean, I did work for an extraordinary mentor, Ralph Lauren, and you do really learn there that you don't digress from your vision. You have to learn that someone very creative and came from Vogue. The newest thing is the best thing. And in terms of Ralph, you really saw the discipline of what it is to have a vision. No matter what's going on, the noise around you, he's staying true to his brand. And for that was an invaluable lesson I learned from him on every level. And so for me, maintaining the codes of our brand and hopefully the respect and the love and the loyalty of the client is one of the most important things.
Discipline is such a great word for that, I think. You also, I would say, are a bit of a rule breaker. You definitely did not go down your route into fashion design wasn't the traditional route, and then, you started a brand a bit later than some people, that still is something that's talked about now.
I mean, I spent over 18 years at American Vogue. I was 23 when I went to work there, and I became a senior fashion editor. So really by the time I went to Ralph Lauren, I'd already had enormous experience in fashion. But then after that, I've spent 36 years building my own brand. So I'm 120, in case you want to know. Maybe 150, who's counting? But I have to say, it's been a long journey. When I look back at the different chapters, they've all been valuable. They've all been exciting. I mean, I've been exposed to things most people will never, ever experience. I mean, I go back to working with photographers like Richard Avedon, Irving Penn. I mean, people that are really incredible icons, not only of fashion, but of photography. And then on top of going to Ralph Lauren, you really do see an incredible brand and how it's built. And it's built, it's constructed. It's not given, it's carefully, carefully built and protected for a very long time.
Do you think, having come through a slightly different route and having had previous careers, of course, your career at Vogue was related to the fashion industry, but having come through that slightly different route, do you think that that enabled you to take more risks and to throw those rules out the window?
I think because I styled the pages in Vogue editorially, you have to be creative, but at the same time, you have to respect what Vogue is sending you to do. So you have to bring back the pictures. That's harder than it sounds. In terms of a company, the hard part has been having to be a businesswoman and an artist. And I started off as an artist, but fortunately or unfortunately, I've really had to become a business person.
We've been talking a bit behind the scenes about the fact that it's Couture Week, so another very important moment for the industry. We've seen 2 huge debuts, and it's been fascinating to observe this sort of excitement and the skepticism, I think, around some of those big moments. And I just wonder, in moments like this, do you feel like the industry is truly reinventing itself, or are we seeing familiar ideas circling?
I think it's a very seminal moment in fashion right now. Having watched it for 58 years, every generation's come along, and I think the influence of tech, AI, and everything else is definitely affecting our industry in terms of creativity, in terms of speed, in terms of so many factors in design and running a company. But I also have to say that I think among the young people and the new designers, particularly haute couture in Paris, there is this desire to prove themselves. And sometimes that involves shock, because you need to differentiate yourself. And sometimes it really requires, in the very beginning, a moment to get your feet stabilized. To take over some of the big houses is an enormous responsibility. You're not only worried about editorial, you're not only worried about quality, a vision, but you also have to worry about being commercial. And sometimes those things are very much at odds with each other.
Yeah.
So this musical chairs that's going on in Paris right now, I think it will settle down, and I think you're going to find a lot of wonderful talents, not changing, but enhancing those brands in a new way.
It is an interesting point, though, isn't it? An inflection point for the industry. We've seen this huge creative reset, so many different people appointed.
Yes.
And it does feel like the industry is trying to find a new language, I suppose.
I think because of what's happening in technology and the speed of things and the generation of young people, they get bored quickly. And yet, the very issue, and that's fashion. Fashion is about change. It's not about the same thing. That's why people like Chanel and Ralph Lauren, those brands, are so unusual, because they manage to keep their codes, but they're evolving their codes.
Absolutely, they've done that very
But
well.
I have to say, as far as the couture and the new talent, I think there really is a need to really experiment more. And the owners of these companies and these brands are obviously willing to shake it up, because they're the ones who finance it.
Yeah.
So that's, in a way, quite courageous and quite necessary.
Something we've heard throughout Shop Talk this time round is that theme of, the balance between the creativity and the commerciality and the cultural impetus it's a difficult one to get right. You are, so Vera Wang, the brand, is going back into ready-to-wear.
Yes.
And I wonder, like, against this context of this big sort of creative reset we're seeing in the industry, where you see the ready-to-wear fitting in.
I think we've never designed clothes for this particular market. We've always been extremely elevated, both in collection, ready-to-wear, whatever people are calling it today, as well as bridal. Not only bridal. We've done ready-to-wear for over 30 years and given very big shows in New York. And I think a lot of the shows we gave were quite important in terms of New York Fashion Week.
Yeah.
But I also have to say at the same time, I always felt the necessity to be able to make clothes that were perhaps more attainable and more wearable and more available, accessible. And I think that does, very honestly, that does have to do with price point. I'm just being realistic. I mean, everybody cannot run around in a $100,000 top, nor can they run around in a $4,000 pullover. So while that all exists, I think this is a very exciting moment for us, really.
And what's your kind of input in terms of, because that collection is being produced under license?
Yes.
But you have the creative overview, and you were
I
saying
think
that
they hate
it's
me.
quite inspired by your wardrobe.
I think they really hate me because it's very hard to have a founder, and it's very hard to have someone that has, I believe, has had such a varied career in fashion. And, you know, I'm really here on behalf of WHP and myself to protect the brand at all costs, and yet to make sure that we're able to intuit with our partners what those codes are and to help them, all of us together, achieve some level of success.
Yes. That must be challenging. I mean, we talked about this before, didn't we? Because of sort of some of the categories that you have gone into, say fragrance, for example,
Yes.
the price points do run, you know, quite a big spectrum.
They
So that
do.
means a different audience at each time. And so your role is what?
Wow,
To make
that's-
sure that brand DNA is being
It's not
interpreted
easy.
or
It's
translated.
really not easy to be able to span that level of product. And I did learn from my mentor, Ralph Lauren, did the same thing. But I have to say, at some point, it's ultimately about taste, one particular taste, a certain style, a certain mood, and a certain dedication and respect for the brand. And I think if you can keep that consistent, which we've tried to do for almost 37 years now, I think that's what really defines a brand that has lasting power.
And this is where I think, you know, I'm sure you feel like there may be some frustrations from the team around having someone with a strong vision, but it is what ultimately makes the brand what it is. And you heard on stage earlier, talked about, you know, the importance of protecting that brand DNA on all costs, right? Because without it, what do you have?
I absolutely, I think that the great thing about WHP is that they, I think, Huda, you gotta answer this, they really, I think, respected my brand to begin with, and that's something I can't even tell you how important that is. And I think particularly when you're working with a founder that's still alive and kicking, I don't know if kicking's the right word, around, let's just say around. I think that's something that, I hope they appreciate. I hope they're not totally annoyed with, but it's our first year. And I guess we're in the honeymoon stage. I don't know, is that true? But in any event, we're adjusting on a daily basis, license by license, you know, event by event. And I think that's sort of the excitement and the freedom and the future for us to be able to create a whole new entity.
And it seems like a lot of the opportunity is around building out that sort of lifestyle proposition, right? So it's everything.
think
It's
fashion-
real estate.
Yeah, I think fashion ultimately is about lifestyle today. It's how women live, how men live, not only how they look, how they want to feel. And fashion by its very, I think, definition is about feelings. One may think it's about visuals. Of course it's about visuals, but it's also about how you feel. And I've always tried to encourage women in particular to really feel free to be themselves. There's no one definition of beauty. There's no one definition of style. And let's face it, lifestyle. If you live in Paris and you're in fashion, you have a very different lifestyle than being a mom in LA. I mean, it's just, women have such varied lives today, and there's so much going on globally and culturally that I think what you're trying to do is at least offer them alternatives.
And again, that's been a big theme, talking about how we interpret luxury today. You know, it goes so much beyond just your brand and beyond producing a certain product.
Luxury for me is time.
Well,
I'm always short of time. I always think I'm late. I'm perpetually late by 45 minutes. But I think a big part of luxury today, given how fast the world is moving, I think time is one of the biggest luxuries for creators, for business people, I mean, for kids, for parents, for everyone.
And we're also seeing a big move into wellness as you know, a real luxury. And I wonder whether, you know, what do you see as the opportunities going for your brand extensions? Is there something maybe you could do in the wellness space?
Well, I actually was once an athlete. I know that sounds odd, but I was a figure skater, which in that day and age meant you were basically a circus performer in Ringling, Barnum, and Bailey Circus. So I'd say to people, I figure skate. And they look at me like they couldn't even understand what that meant in 1958. And I have to say, speaking of the Olympics, I'm going to give a plug, because for the United States, it's one of our best figure skating teams ever. I'm about to go to Milan to support them. But I have to say about athleisure and athletic, I don't feel it. I've lived it. I've really lived it. I've trained for at least 20 years of my life. And when you train at that level, for Olympic level competition, it inspires in you one really major thing I don't think people talk about, because they speak about winning. You've got to win. And in skating, you fall so much to learn about how to jump and how to land and how to move, that in the end, it's really about picking yourself back up, dusting the snow off your rear, and going on. And I think it's that kind of passion and desire and, you know, love that makes you come back all the time. And that's how I think you excel in any career, frankly.
That's so interesting, because so often, and in recent conversations, that sport analogy is often about the discipline of training and competing to win.
Yes.
But actually what you're talking about is a different attitude to it completely, which is just, you know, keep picking yourself back up and you just keep trying.
I think a lot of my life has really been defined by failure. I mean, there have been so many periods in my life that never really felt I could quite make the grade. Sort of like almost, you know, kind of thing. And I know that for the Olympics, I trained so hard for so many years. And it wasn't a sacrifice, because when you love something, it's a privilege. And I know when I couldn't make the team, I always wanted to see the American flag go up, and I was on the top of the podium, and that's a high probably, well, I never experienced it, but my friends have.
Yeah.
And I've seen it, and it's inspirational. But by the same token, because I failed, I went on to do something else. It forced me to look at life and reinvent. And I think most of my story is about reinvention. I really do.
So then, looking at the brand in, say, 10 years' time, where do you see it? You know, is it another stage of reinvention it's going through now?
I hope my brand survives me forever. I think it's it's a kind brand, it's a loving brand, it's romantic, but more than anything, it's emotional. And I think most of the fashion shows people give, whatever that emotion is, every definition of emotion is a different thing. But I think for us, it's really about feelings. Certainly when you dress women on the most important day of their lives, or you dress stars in Hollywood and they're going to win an Oscar, or they're being nominated, those are the biggest watershed moments of their lives. So when you're a part of that, it's not just a dress. It's a vision of themselves, and you're translating them or helping them to translate it. So I like to see that continue. I think emotion is very important today, probably now more than ever.
I agree, and I think that's the key to a brand that will endure for a long, long time to come. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I can't believe it went so quickly, but thank you so much for
thank you,
joining us.
guys.
Fascinating conversation.